Imagine playing an arcade-style game like Tetris and getting paid in cryptocurrency for being a top scorer, after only spending a cent to play and with the opportunity to even win tokens for participation. Well, this isn't from the future. It's already happening today by leveraging blockchain and micropayments. My guest on this episode, Joe Pinto, is a former pro baseball player and co-founder of both BarPay and Haste Arcade, two enterprises which have led Joe and his fellow co-founder Dan Wagner to blockchain and cryptocurrency due to its low transaction fees and micropayment abilities. On this episode, we dive into both BarPay and Haste Arcade and discuss how blockchain-backed micropayments could shift our subscription-based and ad revenue models to a micropayment and consumer-led landscape. Using Haste Arcade as a successful case study of micropayments in what Joe refers to as a play and earn game, this episode has left me wondering how long it will take other game and content creators to experiment with and eventually adopt similar systems. I'm Jarrett Carpenter, and this is More Than Blockchain. Joe, welcome to More Than Blockchain. How are you?
I'm doing well, Jarrett. Thanks for having me. Excited to talk some Bitcoin.
Talk some crypto, it's a funny world we're living in because I don't know how you feel, but I have like my crypto community and then I have like the rest of my life, and those are like concentric circles, ones within, or like with the Russian nesting dolls, right?
Yeah.
They're part of the same, but they're kind of different. And I think are you on the West Coast right now?
I'm on the West Coast. I'm in Los Angeles. Yeah.
Oh, okay, cool. And before we get into your two ventures that have totally brought you forward into the payment system and into the Web3 space, how is that for you navigating the world of crypto and then kind of your real life? And where is the West Coast on this? Because I have spent very little time on the West Coast. I will be getting out there more, I think, into Seattle and Los Angeles specifically. Yep. But talk to me about where you are personally, and then we'll flow right into where you are professionally.
Well, first, I just got to ask, are you the guy at parties that people are like avoiding because like you just want to talk about crypto the whole time? It's like people will always hear like, oh, this guy is somewhat into Bitcoin. I'm like, do you have 3 hours? Do you really want to go down this rabbit hole before we do this? Or like, I'm giving you a chance to get out now because there's no short story here. Like, is that you? That's kind of how I am out here.
That's a really good question you asked that, because have you seen the movie Meet the Parents with De Niro?
Yeah.
So, the whole first, I think it's the first movie, or maybe it's in Meet the Fockers in the sequel. But the entire time, De Niro's wife, whenever he like goes into his CIA mode and gets like really like, she'll say muskrat. So now when I'm out, I tell myself muskrat. Like I was out the other day and someone was complaining about inflation, and I had that, like the woman who's the actress who plays De Niro's wife in my head just saying muskrat, Jack, muskrat. Because otherwise I was going to go off the deep end and be like, well, you may want to look into an asset that's going to, protect your purchasing power, and that is decentralized and isn't, beholden to the Federal Reserve and Jerome Powell. And I was just like, oh yeah, it's really bad. Like it's super bad. So I think I was more, but I think the problem now, and maybe you run into this too, is because you're tied to it, people just assume that maybe you can sum it up in an easy answer. And one of the bigger problems I have, and maybe you can speak on this as far as it relates to your first endeavor, which is BarPay, is I don't think the average person understands how money works and how it's transacted. And so if you don't understand kind of some financial literacy tenets and other things, just diving into Bitcoin, like you're saying, it's like trying to understand algebra, and we haven't even talked about addition. Yeah. So it gets really complicated. But yeah, are you that guy? Have you run into that? How has that been for you?
I'm kind of similar to you where like I will, like I said, I'll warn somebody beforehand, like, do you really want to have this conversation? Like there isn't a 2-minute version of this really. Like at the shortest, I can maybe keep it to like 10 to 15 minutes. So maybe go get a beer if you want to have a talk about this. But yeah, I definitely come into that situation pretty often. I think we all kind of have those friends now who will be like, oh God, like he's talking about Bitcoin now. It's like some of my friends have been around it enough where they can start reciting it basically the same way that I talk about it or that my co-founder Dan talks about it. And it is fun. Like it's great to talk about. And then if you actually do meet someone who has some knowledge, you guys can actually have like a legitimate conversation. But yeah, I try to keep that somewhat separate when I'm, just out casually with friends. And, most of them know at this point, like, don't bring it up around Joe or Dan. Like, they'll go down the rabbit hole for 2 hours and all that, and they joke about it. But yeah, I think that Meet the Parents reference is perfect. I would definitely agree with that.
And now, unfortunately, just because of the way the world is, you're always going to think about that. You're going to be out and someone's going to be
Yeah.
talking about some cryptocurrency scam, and you're just going to be like waiting in Starbucks, and you're holding, and you've got your wallet ready to pay or whatever, and you're just like, oh my god, like, do
Yep.
I turn around? Do I nope, muskrat. So
Yep.
it's good to know I'm not alone, and it is interesting juggling these different worlds we're in. And so let's go back in time and let's go to 2015
Sure.
when you started Bar Pay.
Yeah.
And I was able to, before we hopped on today, look at some of the other interviews that you've done and some podcasts, because I think, if we now jump ahead 30 years and we look back on being able to use a QR code to kind of seamlessly pay, people will be like, oh yeah, that's obvious.
Right.
But what wasn't obvious in 2015 that made Bar Pay a viable solution in a landscape where there was a lot of challenge and friction?
I'll tell you what, I mean, we still kind of fight it today. But basically, the main concept for that came from my co-founder of that company, same guy, Dan Wagner. We met playing baseball in the minor leagues for the Chicago White Sox. And in that lifestyle, you're in, smaller towns, college towns, small cities, whatever, traveling every 2 or 3 days by bus. And the game schedule is usually 6 or 7 o'clock at night. The game starts, the game ends around 10 or 11. Sometimes you have to do a workout after. Otherwise, like, you get cleaned up and you head back towards the hotel, and you got 45 minutes to an hour before curfew. And if you don't make it back to your room in time for curfew and they happen to check, you get fined or you can't play the next day. So typically at that time of night, the only places open that are still serving food are your fast food joints or like, little bars or tavern type places. So we obviously spent a lot of time at bars just like that scenario. And after enough times of forgetting your credit card, or if it's like a Friday night and it's really busy and it takes 20 minutes to get your card back to close out your tab, you miss curfew a couple times, you get fined, you don't get to play the next day, whatever it is. Like, man, how come there's not a better way to do this? Like, that was the time where apps were kind of booming for everything. So everyone was building all these apps. And Dan and I just kind of hit it off in the sense that, like, we both had a pretty similar idea of what we wanted out of life after baseball. Like, we didn't really want to stay in the baseball scene unless we made it to the big leagues and, got the big contracts and all that. But, neither of us did, obviously. So our careers both ended the same year. And Dan was from just outside of Charlotte. I'm from the Los Angeles area. We kept in touch. And we had this idea of, like, maybe you can order and pay for food and drinks at a busy bar just by using an app on your phone. And in that learning is basically we had to, research credit card processing rates. These were things that we would have to explain to bar owners, like, hey, this is how much you're getting charged. This is what we can charge you. And it just seemed like, everywhere we went, no matter what we were telling them the rate was, which it still is basically the same standard for a digital payment, 2.9% and 30 cents. That was always kind of high for the bar and restaurant industry just because that was a quote unquote card not present transaction. And so in our learnings about all this, Dan had actually come across Bitcoin through, he had like a position in gold that he had liquidated earlier in the year and had like some profits that he was looking to reinvest. And so he's telling me about this Bitcoin thing, and I'm starting to look at it, and we're both saying, like, wow, like, this is promising extremely fast transactions for a fraction of a cent, as opposed to this 2.9% and 30 cents, model that's pretty standard. It's like, this could be really disruptive if we were able to build this into BarPay. Now, we never were able to do that, unfortunately, but BarPay went on, signed a bunch of college venues. It worked really well as an app, and then just during the pandemic, we ended up pivoting towards QR codes just because it was easier. We learned over the years that it was really hard to get people to focus and download an app while they're actually in a venue. Obviously, the QR codes make that a lot more streamlined. But I think one of the things people don't realize about QR codes is that up until 2019, 2020, you still had to download an app to scan a QR code. So it kind of like was counterproductive. So right around then is when the iPhone and most of the Androids started building in the QR reader to their camera. So it just kind of worked out nicely where we pivoted from just having an app to actually using QR codes now. And that company still is up and running today. We still manage it on a daily basis. It's got about 10,000 accounts, whether they're using like digital menus or the order and pay service. But we haven't actually gotten the blockchain involved in it yet. That's still something that we would love to do because of those benefits on the credit card savings and the processing of transactions. Like we definitely think that's something that more and more merchants, as they become aware and understand like what blockchain is, it's not just this investment vehicle. There's real utility to this stuff. I think there will be a certain tipping point where all of a sudden all retail will be like, we would love for you to pay in crypto of some sort.
When you and Dan are thinking about how you want to make bar pay more, I'm throwing quotes here, more Web3, what are you thinking? Is this because like the two things that go off my mind are stable coins or Bitcoin, or do you offer both? Or do you link with an app that a lot of other people kind of already have, like a Cash App or a Venmo or a Robinhood, because they all now have crypto.
Yep.
What does that look like? Or is there an NFT component with membership where you're going to get discounts? What does it look like? Because it can go a lot of different places, I'm assuming.
I think yeah, it's all the above. I think the stable coin would probably make the most sense to start. So the problem with the stable coins right now, though, if they're on Ethereum, is the gas fees, right? Like, am I going to pay $12 for my chicken fingers and spend $15 in gas fees to send it? Like, no, I'm not. So I think a scalable blockchain, which is what we believe we're working with in the Haste Arcade. But anyways, I think a stablecoin would be a great starting point. I think you could do things like loyalty tokens. I feel like that's going to be a huge next step for any business. Really, is a loyalty token, and most places already have their own loyalty programs. Where if I go to Starbucks, right, and I buy a cup of coffee, I get my 2 Starbucks stars or whatever. But I can only use them within the Starbucks ecosystem. So once these businesses understand, like, hey, my token that I just made up out of thin air is now trading on exchanges that I can actually get a dollar value for, as opposed to just having people redeem it. That's going to be like a light bulb moment where it's like all of a sudden every loyalty program should be in token, and you get them simply for spending. And like, so what we do with Haste is within the arcade, based on the games you play that day, same as a traditional arcade. I might not get on the leaderboard, but if I play the game, I get tickets that I can go and redeem for prizes. Well, in this Web3 economy, the prizes can be other cryptos, other stable coins, whatever. So you're basically earning these tokens through just purchasing goods like you normally would, but now you can actually redeem them for, that particular venue's food, or, if you want to cash them out into a stable coin in real money. So I think that those would be the first two places. I think the NFTs are really fascinating. Like the example that I've thought about in the past is if I'm opening a new restaurant and I want to pre-fund, my restaurant basically, I could sell 1,000 NFTs for a chicken sandwich, $10 a piece. So people go and buy these ahead of time. $10,000 I just made. I open my restaurant. I start cranking out these chicken sandwiches. Someone might come and be like, wow, this chicken sandwich is really good. This is worth more than $10. I'm going to buy up a ton of these NFTs and just hold on to them. And now the value of these things is going to increase over time. So I'm actually going to make a profit from being an early adopter of this venue. And then the venue obviously is going to have a royalty, programmed into that NFT. So anytime someone purchases it from me, they're getting another kickback on top of that. Those are the three things I could see happening within the next maybe 5 or so years in the food and bev industry. But we would love to figure out a way to do all that with BarPay. I think that would be really cool from a product perspective. I'm not sure the integrations on like Cash App or Venmo, stuff like that. I haven't looked too deeply into it, but I'm sure they probably have decent APIs where it wouldn't be that difficult to figure out a way to merge those two.
That was a phenomenal answer. I was like, I have no idea what he's going to take. Is he going to take the stable? Is he going to take the Bitcoin? Is he going to, take the NFT? And I love your idea of the chicken sandwiches, because I do think that is where things will totally move. And I can even see, I'm not a coffee drinker, but most of the world is. And people are crazy for their coffee. And I could totally see a thing where Starbucks says, yeah, we're going to drop 100,000 NFTs. And they're each, I don't know, start them at $10. And if you have one of these NFTs, maybe that's too cheap. I'm not thinking like of the entire economics here, but if you have one of these NFTs, every Friday and Monday, you're going to get 50% off forever.
Yeah.
And if you buy enough coffee, you can do the napkin math and be like, yeah, okay, this makes sense. Let me go get one of these NFTs. Now I'm supporting Starbucks, etc. There's a bunch of things that can go. And you already talked about Haste Arcade, and you brought that in super nicely, which is great. So how do we go from, I believe Dan is also with you in Haste Arcade. So how do you go from you and Dan doing BarPay to you and Dan saying, you know what, we already have one company. We've got some time in our hands, right? We're not entrepreneurs. So
Yeah.
how do you go ahead and do, talk to me about Haste Arcade? Because it looks like, and this is also something that came from the pandemic, looks like maybe you had some time. maybe you had some extra cash, and maybe you saw a problem, or you saw something that needed to be, shared with the world. Because that is really at the roots of this podcast. I had some time, and I said, you know what? Let me start talking about stuff that I want to talk about and share it with the world. So, is that similar to how you guys got into Haste Arcade, or is this kind of like the actionable event of let's do something with crypto?
I think it's one of the things that you hit on where it's like, what is the problem, right? And it wasn't one of those things where we had extra time. We were in the office. It was January 2nd, if I recall correctly. So we're still somewhat hungover from New Year's in 2021. And I think Bitcoin had just, or I'm sorry, BTC had just reached, 50 or 60,000 bucks or whatever, and we're sitting there like scratching our heads like, and just for the record, like I'm not a huge fan of BTC. I think that there's been a huge miscommunication about what Bitcoin actually is and whether it's on purpose or not. I'm of the original belief, and what originally attracted me to Bitcoin was the white paper and the title itself, like an electronic peer-to-peer cash system. So in my opinion, it was something that was supposed to be used, right? When we started looking at this, it was because it actually solved a major problem for us, like the credit card processing rates. It had nothing to do with like, oh, we think that we're gonna make millions of dollars off this by investing in it. We were just like, this technology could seriously mess up the credit cards, and it would give us a huge advantage as this little startup. So going down the rabbit hole, reading the white paper, reading Satoshi's old blog posts and Reddit threads and all that stuff, it's like there's a pretty clear vision for what Satoshi actually wanted Bitcoin to be, in my opinion. And it was a peer to peer cash, something for small casual payments on the internet. So we followed that narrative pretty much the whole way. So, bought BTC before there was Ethereum. Ethereum gets on Coinbase. Dan got some Ethereum at like $8, and he ended up selling it, I think, at like $20. Thought he made a killing. But I end up like, we're following it. We're seeing now in 2017 all the ICOs. I don't know if you remember this thing called BitConnect, but we were involved in that. Lost a lot of money on that. It was fun. It was really fun. They were like making money out of nowhere. It was crazy, and then it all just collapsed. Then Bitcoin forked into Bitcoin Cash, and and at least from what we had understood and what we were attracted to Bitcoin about, Bitcoin Cash, maintained the utility of peer-to-peer cash and something I could actually spend and send back and forth in small amounts without having to pay a crazy gas fee or without having to wait, days at a time for it to arrive. So thinking, hey, everyone's gonna understand this. I transfer all my BTC into BCH, and obviously, like the market said otherwise. So I'm sitting there with BCH, scratching my head, like, man, like I just don't get what you can do with this BTC thing. It's not the same as what it was when we first got involved. And then, the Bitcoin Cash group, that was fairly libertarian, fairly anti-government, which I mean, I'm not a huge supporter of the banking system or the governments, but I do think there is, some need for regulation in some capacity in the world. I think it's kind of utopian and altruistic to think that we're just going to be able to, everyone just does their own thing and things are fine. So I was like, this blockchain has the utility, but the group that's kind of guiding it just doesn't. They're not lining up for global adoption. They're lining up for their own island, and we're just going to go do our own thing. And there was a significant amount of developers within that Bitcoin Cash camp that felt the same way I did. It was like, no, we need regulation. We need enterprise and government adoption for this to truly scale to a global state. And so that's when in 2018 you had Bitcoin Cash fork into Bitcoin SV, Satoshi Vision. And that is the one that I followed. I was a believer in what those people, and Dan as well, believed in what that camp of developers said. This is what Bitcoin's supposed to be used for. Again, casual payments on the internet, extremely low cost, extremely quick transactions. So I sold all my Bitcoin Cash into Bitcoin SV. So I went from BTC to BCH to BSV and lost on every one of those thus far. I'm playing the long game. I think that in the end, utility is going to be what wins out. But basically, to tie it back into how Haste came about, we're sitting there in 2021, scratching our heads as we're watching BTC, go through the roof. BSV's, I don't know, maybe at like $100 at this point. And we're just like, man, like, why aren't people like getting it? There's so much more you can do with this than just invest in it. Like, you can actually use it to do things like micropayments. And what could we do to actually like show our friends even like, hey, this is what a micropayment is. It's pretty cool. So we're there, we're just like talking about, if I had a quarter, I could split it up 100 ways and send a fraction of that quarter to 100 of my friends. So what's like going to be the mechanism to trigger this payment? And we wrote down 100 different friends. We had this thing. It looked like a leaderboard. We're like, well, what if we just make like a simple game? Whoever does the best on the game gets the highest at the leaderboard. Wherever you are on this leaderboard, you get a certain fraction of that 25 cents. And we launched it. The original game itself was called Haste. It was just you hit play game. You could play for a penny, 10 cents, a dollar, $10 or $100, whatever you wanted. Most people played for a penny or 10 cents. And basically, the screen would go blank on your phone, and then within 2 seconds, a little dot would pop up. And the whole point of the game was just tap the dot as fast as you can. Like really simple, really stupid, but it got the point across, and it went viral within the BSV community because they're just like, oh my god, like these guys get it. This is what micropayments are all about. Like we're sending, a 1,000th of a cent to 100 different people all instantly, and it's just like this is something that the entire world could get behind. You don't have to have $50 in gas fees that you can afford to be able to now play and earn. This is something that third world countries could actually participate in. So we kind of released it, and what happened after that was kind of an accident. Just we didn't realize how much hype and love it was going to get from the actual BFB community. Investors started reaching out to us, but I think the real like aha moment was about a week after we put that game out. There was a VC company that we'd never heard of, we never talked to. They wrote an article about it, and they basically took Flappy Birds from back in like 2014, one of those games that went crazy viral. It had about 50 million users at its peak. And they said, if you were to take that same game with those same dynamics and people playing, the game developers at its peak would have gone from making about $50,000 to $60,000 a day in ad revenue to $2.8 million if gamers were just playing at the 1 penny level, because the game developer gets an output, one of those 100 outputs from that transaction. And then, whatever gamer was in first place would have been making $100,000 or I'm sorry, it was $200,000 a day from being in that number one leaderboard spot. And that's just off playing from a penny. So when we saw that, it was like, wow, this could be something that the gaming industry actually has interest in. You have gamers who, yeah, I'm willing to risk a penny for this game, whatever. If I do well, I can make some real money off this. And then from the game developer standpoint, it's like, instead of having to serve my players with ads, I'll give them the option to pay a penny, and I'm going to make way more money than if I was serving up ads. And so that's kind of how it all started and progressed into what it is now.
That's an amazing breakdown of what you guys are doing, because I think for creators, like with this podcast, and I'll use the podcast for example, I am very reticent to have ads on the podcast. Where you and I were talking, I'm like, yeah, Joe, we'll be right back. And then it goes and it's like, yeah, make sure you buy Downy double ply, da. It'll make your life better. And then we come back into Joe talking about Haste Arcade. I think it waters down the message. I just think it totally kills the message. But I'm also like, eventually, as a creator, you have to get paid for what you're creating because you have to eat. Like, Maslow's hierarchy of needs kicks in eventually,
Yep.
unless money isn't a problem for you, which is a different conversation. But most people, most creators are stuck with that. How do I make money? So you guys have almost figured that out, because you can incentivize a game creator to come on, create a game where they can just ask the user for a penny, which is such an infinitesimal amount of money compared
Yep.
to where we are in the world, that then they're able to play. Okay, that was a great breakdown. And thank you also for breaking down the Bitcoin to Bitcoin Cash to Bitcoin SV, which I have read about when the SV came out, and I did some brush up before we talked, but that was absolutely great. And so right now with Haste, where is Haste? How many games can be played? And I went on the website. I'm not a gamer though, but maybe I would be incentivized definitely to try Haste. What does that look like? If I go on Haste right now, Haste Arcade, is it
Yep.
hastearcade.com?
Yep.
How do I get in? How do I play? Do I need a digital wallet? How am I, paid? I know I have to, finish higher up in the leaderboard to be compensated. Can you kind of break down, talk to me like I'm not a gamer, because I'm actually not.
Hey, I'm really not either. In fact, I can say the same for Dan, and I guess some of our other devs now at this point they are. But yeah, so the Haste Arcade, like you said, it's hastearcade.com. Basically, I think we have 12 or 13 games now in the arcade, and there's two pieces to it. Like, we've developed a handful of the games. We also have a software developer kit, because our vision, like I said, we're not gamers, we're not necessarily game developers. But we wanted those third-party game developers to have the ability to plug in what we call instant leaderboard payouts into games that they had developed, right? It gives them a way to monetize immediately. And then on top of that, because there's already an established user base now in the arcade, if you're a new game developer, like building a user base for your game, like how do you even start? You got to run your own ads on Instagram. That's really expensive. You got to go and like do all this Discord stuff. Like that's really time consuming. Well, we have over 10,000 people in the arcade now, and this is only going on like 4 or 5 months since we started actually, launching the real version to the public. So it's like you launch a game in here, you're going to get eyeballs immediately, and you're going to get revenue immediately. Now they're micropayments, so it takes some time to actually add up to significant money, but that's basically the two sides of it. So there's our games that we've developed. There's the third party games. You can play any of them. Each game you can play for free, or you do have different paid levels. So like I said, there's a penny, 10 cents, $1, $10, or $100. And if you want to play at those levels, you do have to have a wallet. The wallet that we integrate with in the arcade is called Hand Cash. It's a pretty sleek. It looks fairly similar to Venmo. Really simple. You can actually buy you have to have BSV to pay and play, so you can buy BSV within the Hand Cash wallet itself. And then something we had originally that got stopped by Stripe, the credit card processor, we had like a credit system where you could just buy Haste credits within the arcade itself. They don't do anything with online gaming. We didn't know that ahead of time. So we're working on getting those back up with a different processor. But yeah, you go to the arcade, you create an account either through Haste or through Hand Cash, and then you can play the games for free or you can play them on the paid levels. Now, if you play one of the paid levels and you make the leaderboard, if you're the number one spot, you're going to make a higher percentage of the following gameplays than whoever's in the number 100 spot. But that's how long the leaderboards are. They're 100 people deep, with the exception of the penny level. The penny's only 10 people deep. But let's take the 10 cents, for example. So, I could go in, I could play for 10 cents and say I get position number 75. Okay, so I did okay. I didn't do that great, but I'm on the leaderboard. Well, for as long as I'm in that spot or somewhere on the leaderboard, anyone that plays that level after me, so anyone that spends a dime, 10 cents on that game after me, I'm going to get a portion of their dime. So if I'm number one on the leaderboard, I get 10%. So I'm actually making a penny every time someone plays. If I'm number 77, it's something like 0.2%. So, a 2/100ths of a cent, something like that. But the bottom line is, if you're good at these games and they're skill based, so you can practice them for free, get good enough, get on a leaderboard, you're going to make micropayments from being on that leaderboard. And then the other thing I'll say is that those different like pay to play levels, the 10 cent versus the dollar versus the $10 versus $100, those leaderboards last set amounts of time. So the 1 cent, the 10 cent, and the dollar levels, they all reset after 24 hours of you being on the leaderboard. So if I'm on the leaderboard for 24 hours, nobody knocks me off, then after 24 hours, my score will automatically basically be, that'll be it. Its time will be done. The $10 level, the $100 level, those last longer. So $10 is a month, $100 is like 6 months, and that's assuming that nobody, that 100 people haven't gotten better scores than you. So if you get on that, $100 leaderboard, you get some serious money coming in for a decent amount of time. And we've got people who have made hundreds. A couple people actually made like a couple $1,000 within the arcade just from being on those leaderboards. So pretty cool. And then the other aspect would be I touched on this a little bit with the tokens, but say you don't make a leaderboard, but you paid to play one of these games. Well, we have the Haste token, HST. There was never like a crowd sale for this. It wasn't an ICO. It's literally just a rewards token. And basically, every single day, there is a set amount that gets distributed to anybody that spent money in the arcade that day. So the actual number is like 43,835 tokens are distributed every single day to people that play. So if I go and I spend, call it $100 in the arcade on a given day, if there were $1,000 spent that entire day in the arcade, I spent 10% of the total spend. So I get 10% of those Haste tokens that are distributed that day. So I would get like, 4,383 tokens or whatever it is. And so what you can do with those is you can, buy prizes within the arcade. So that would be like NFTs that you can use in other games. Or this token is actually trading on an exchange, I think on a couple exchanges now. And it's trading at about around a penny right now. So there have been some arbitrage moments where people are spending, $10 and actually getting like $12 worth of tokens back that day and making a profit just from the tokens. So there's a bunch of different ways to earn in the arcade. The leaderboards are sweet, and then the tokens I think are just another cool example of utility of the blockchain.
What and you're gonna have to excuse once again my ignorance just because I haven't gone in and I will now go try to play a game. I'm just so bad at games. It seems like maybe we have a similar background. I was just raised as an athlete and I was just playing outside as a kid and I never really had video games. My parents also said I couldn't have video games. So once that happened, I was just playing sports all the seasons and
Yep.
whatever. But I'm definitely going to dive in because I want to know two things. Like, one, what types of the games are there? Because when you're talking about this, I'm thinking of something
Yeah.
skill based like Tetris. Like, you can get really good at Tetris.
Yep.
Takes a while, but there's a way to get good at it. And then the other thing is, what does the UX, like, what's the user experience? Are we already in the metaverse? Is it something like the Decentraland Casino? Or is it a little bit more Web 2y with obviously, I'm sure you guys have plans to put this somewhere in Sandbox or Decentraland or make it more of a I can put on my Oculus and go play around in the Haste Arcade.
Yeah, yeah, great question. The games right now, super hyper casual. Like they are as basic as it gets. And they're fun. Like I think they're fun not being a crazy gamer, but you're not going to go in the arcade right now and find like Call of Duty. We're just not there yet. The hope is that eventually we have enough users where we can knock on Call of Duty's door and be like, hey, there should be an instant leaderboard payout for headshots in your online arcade. So it's like anyone that's playing online, they can go and say, for this next game, I'll play on the 10 cent level. If I'm in the top, 25 in headshots this game, I'm going to get payouts from everyone else that decided to play. We're not there yet, not even close. So right now, like I said, the games are extremely casual. We do have like decent amount of new games coming out in the next couple months here. There should be like 2 or 3 that come out in September, and they're just going to keep getting better. I think as more and more game developers become aware of this, like you'll see higher quality games as we get more games built under our belt. Like our games are definitely progressing from the very first game that was just tapping. Now we actually have like characters and stuff in the game, so it's kind of cool. But yeah, it's definitely stuff that you can play while you're in the bathroom or while you're on an airplane or something like that. Not something where you're gonna have to sit down and spend hours of your day, really digging into a deep storyline and doing that whole thing. So hyper casual games, definitely open to game developers who want to build a much more involved or thorough game and implement the leaderboard payouts. But I think for the next little bit here, it'll probably be more of the same. Your Candy Crush type games, Flappy Birds, that type of stuff.
That makes sense, and it totally vibes with the name of Haste Arcade. When I think of an arcade, I think of maybe Mortal Kombat, or I think of a game that its shelf life is about 5 minutes. It's not like
Yep.
Call of Duty where I could be sitting there for 3 hours playing it, or some of these other bigger games. So that makes sense. And then tying it back to a comment that you made earlier about, hey, Bitcoin as far as being a peer-to-peer cash, Satoshi's vision, if we go all the way on that journey from Bitcoin to Bitcoin Cash to Bitcoin SV, which I believe is 128 megabytes per block, which is amazing. Where are the games being played? Because you talked about, it's not going to allow somebody in a developing country to be able to have the same access, but when you talking about a penny, maybe that's something that somebody may be able to do who's only actually making $2 to $3 a day or
Yep.
$3 to $5 a day in their economy, probably with a currency that's probably depreciating as we
Yep.
all going into this global pressure right now on currency. Where are people playing the games? Is it just is because I'm assuming it's not just stateside, I guess is my assumption.
No, it's global. I mean, we've got players all around the world. I wouldn't say it's a lot. I think 10,000 is a pretty nice number so far, considering we just started doing our actual public advertising. But in the global sphere, like that's nothing, right? So there are gamers. We've seen a lot from like East Asia. The Philippines area seems like that's a big hub for gaming and play to earn stuff like this, where you can play for really really small amounts of money. But the majority is definitely the U.S. still. I think that's obviously where we're all based. That's where the majority of our marketing has been targeted. But there's a group, a nonprofit called the Bitcoin Association for BSV. They do stuff all around the world. They've had us at they call them Bitcades, so they'll actually build out like a small arcade, host our games there. And I mean, Dubai is not necessarily a poor country or a poor city, but Dubai was a place. They've done stuff in Norway. They've done stuff in Africa. In where were they just most recently? Nigeria, South Africa. Like they're definitely targeting more than just like the first world, United States, England countries. They're trying to get this type of technology out around the world. And so you will see, Haste basically in most of the countries at this point that have access to the internet, just because of how, global Bitcoin SV positions itself, and us being one of, the easy examples that they can give of like, hey, here's real micropayments, here's an arcade that anybody, in the world that has a wallet can go and do. Like, we've gotten some really cool exposure from that. So yeah, I'd say it's definitely global at this point, but we're still, at least our marketing has been more focused on North America and the US.
If it's fair to say that Haste Arcade is part of this new P2E, right? Which you probably know what that means. If someone's new to crypto and you're listening to the podcast, P2E in our terms is play to earn. How do you think Haste Arcade lines up against other things? And I'm just going to use Axie Infinity because I think it's the lowest hanging fruit and one of the
Sure.
most known projects. Where are they doing something that maybe you want to emulate? But where are they also doing something that you're like, no, we want to stay far away from that?
Yeah, it's interesting. So we use the term play and earn, as opposed to play to earn. Just because, like I said, if you're playing one of our games on a paid level, you're getting tokens, so you're earning whether you like it or not. Um, And I would say, in terms of what Axie did, I think they've obviously had some struggles recently. The chain didn't really scale, and they had a hack, and I don't know all the details, but I think what they did was really trailblaze the idea of, hey, there's a lot of money to be made from both a game developer and a gamer standpoint in Web3. And it in my opinion, it kind of open people's eyes up to like, okay, this isn't all just like a scam. Like, this is actually interesting. Like, there's people who are building businesses off this. You can build an ecosystem of a business within that game that I thought was like absolutely fascinating. Like, if I buy this plot of land, yeah, it might cost me $2 million, like in real money, but I now have an apple tree that every other character needs to come and purchase apples from. Like, that to me is a very simple way to demonstrate like this is what a future metaverse type world could look like. Now, I don't necessarily think that spending money for real estate within the metaverse makes any sense. Like, I think the whole point of the metaverse is like I can be anywhere instantly. So like, yeah, the piece of real estate right next to the Gucci store to me has the same value as a piece of real estate that's in a desert, because I can just type in like I want to go here and I'm there. I'm not actually physically walking. But I think that was what they did a great job of, at least, kind of breaking down some boundaries. Now, where I think what we do, and this does tie somewhat into Bitcoin SV, versus basically what every other play to earn or play and earn game does differently, is that we have these micropayments. We're not strictly relying on NFTs to make money and for gamers to make money. It's not just about I have a rare skin, or I found, a Dropbox that had an NFT in it that I can resell. It's more skill based. It's I'm competing, I'm putting up my own funds, right, to participate in this game. But if I'm good at it because it's skill based, like I'm going to earn from it. So I think it's a little bit more tied into how the current world actually works. Like, I don't, very often just walk down the street and find a treasure chest that has, a diamond in it, and now I have this awesome diamond that I can sell. It's more like, hey, I had to go to school and study this stuff, and that's my proof of work. And now all of a sudden I'm in the working world and I'm producing these things that are making me money based off, how good or bad I am at producing them. So I think where we separate ourselves, and I hope that the rest of the crypto community in general at least understands. They don't have to agree with it, but I think that micropayments is something that a lot of blockchains have really just kind of overlooked because of the gas fees of Ethereum, right? Like, if you're doing a token on Ethereum, the gas fee is just too expensive. BTC can't even do tokens, and I think people have just accepted like, oh, BTC transactions are really expensive. So then you have chains like Solana, which I think Solana is a pretty decent example of a chain that's trying to do similar stuff to BSV. But even there, we've seen that network go down a handful of times, and they're also running an account-based model as opposed to an unspent transaction output model, which I'm not going to go into the details of that. But basically, the way that the Haste Arcade works, the way that all these leaderboard payouts work, and the micropayments, we couldn't do it on a account-based, blockchain. And most of those are going to be like your proof of stake chains, like Solana. So I don't know. I think there's a huge debate within the community about proof of stake, proof of work, and I think that ties directly into how we do micropayments and how I personally view micropayments and what they could do. But like, here's another example. Your podcast right now, we've been going for 20, 30 minutes, whatever it is. And, let's say you want to monetize this. Well, with micropayments, you could monetize every minute. You could say, hey, it's going to cost you a penny or a nickel or 10 cents for every minute of content that you consume that I've posted. Can't do that really with other blockchains. And that's something that I think once like you said, the content creators really start to understand that, it's going to be a huge, huge shift in the way that people think about I'm putting, content out into the world, and this is how I'm going to monetize it. And I just, the other example I give is like my dad sends me New York Times articles all the time, and I don't have a subscription. So I'll read the first paragraph of one that sounds interesting, and then I'll get, hey, give us your email, or you have to pay $14.99 a month to sign up. It's just like, no, man, like I don't want to do that. I don't read enough of these articles, and I don't want to come out of pocket $14 a month that I'm going to forget about next month. But if I could just spend 50 cents or $1 to read that particular article, I would do it. But they haven't implemented, those payment rails yet. So I think that's the other aspect of something that we're doing that I think a lot of other chains have kind of neglected, whether out of, just they can't or they just don't think it's that powerful. But in going from Web 2 to Web 3, like that's what I see, probably the most powerful tool being is the micropayment aspect.
You've absolutely just answered something that I posed the other day. It was talking about how Coinbase is going to have like this white glove top tier thing where Coinbase is struggling to provide revenue. They need
Right.
revenue. They've laid off 1,800 people or something like that, 20% of their workforce. Their NFT thing didn't really work out because I don't think it's necessarily better than OpenSea, and people are already into OpenSea. And they're talking about how they're going to do a membership thing. And I had posted on LinkedIn, like memberships and subscriptions, not memberships. Subscriptions are so Web 2.
Yeah.
That's can't be where the world, like, please, that cannot be
Yeah.
where the world is. We already have this thing that somebody created called Truebill, which you will pay a subscription to delete your subscriptions. So you save money as a millennial. So maybe you can afford a house. And I'm just like, oh my God, this is bad. So I love that idea because if the New York Times, it happened the other day, it was an article, maybe it was Vanity Fair or Forbes or one of these, and I wanted to read it. I was super excited about whatever they were talking about. I go in, I get out of the 1,500 words and maybe get 150, and then that thing pops up, right?
Yep.
And if there was an option and it says connect wallet and then it says pay 5 cents to read, I would have read it.
Yep.
5 cents, whatever. I don't care. And like you're saying, maybe it would be better for whoever that publication was because then they can still feed me all their ads and then I just disappear.
Yep.
And then they can continue to target me if they want with like subscription. But having the micro and the subscription would be an amazing thing, or even just with like Netflix. Because I know Netflix is
Yep.
going to continue to ramp up its subscription prices and all that. So, other than micropayments for arcade, for Haste Arcade, is there another place in the world besides maybe these subscriptions where you think micropayments could totally, revolutionize the way that we're currently engaging with it?
Yeah, I mean, another example I'll give, there's actually a company in BSV called Twetch, and they're one of the bigger companies in BSV basically. But imagine Twitter, but anytime you post, it's going to cost you a certain amount to post, whether it's a penny or 2 cents. But then you can set a price if someone wants to like that post or retweet or comment on it, they're going to have to also spend a certain amount. So you could be a content creator who's putting out great content, and if people are actually engaging with it, you're making a significant amount of money. Now, why would someone want to pay to have to post something, or why would someone want to have to pay to like? Well, it gets rid of bots, is really what it does. It solves that whole like fake account issue, and it's just like these are legitimate people. Like no one's gonna just front money for a bot. We're talking, not even small amounts of money here, just so that they can have 1,000 different likes. Like it kind of cleans up the trash and the garbage that's on the internet, the stuff that you can't really verify, the people that they don't have a profile picture and you don't really know anything about them. It's just like the proof of work is in what you're spending to actually post that content and then to like or retweet that content. So yeah, I could see that being a really good example. Another example I like giving is like 5 years from now when Elon has us all in our self-driving cars. It's like I need to get to where I'm going faster than you do. You're in front of me, your car is driving itself, I'm behind you. I'm going to ping you 20 cents and your car is going to move out of the way and my car is going to go past yours. So you just made 20 cents for doing what you're already doing. I just spent 20 cents and now I'm getting where I want to go sooner. So I see a whole world where if it's all running on a blockchain, you can do things like this. You can send these really small payments to reward people for things that they're already doing or to earn from things you're already doing. And that is just really exciting to me. I would love to, be making money just because someone's passing me on the freeway. I think that'd be an awesome world.
That is an amazing example because it was about 2 months ago. I was in Colombia, and I don't know if you've ever been to Bogota, Colombia. There's a thing called Montserrat, and it's basically you go. It's a tourist attraction. It doesn't matter where you are. You had to wait in a line to get a tram or a train or something to go see tourism, right?
Yep.
And we were on top of this mountain, and we needed to come down. And we wanted to take this kind of tram type thing, and I'm waiting in line, and this woman comes to cut, and we're like, no, come on, like we've been waiting for 40 minutes in line, and somebody says the classic thing, which we said in grade school: hey, if you're gonna cut, you have to ask everyone behind if it's okay. And we could live in a world where she's like, okay, I'll pay everyone 50 cents. Everyone cool. And she just goes by with her QR code. And
Yeah.
in about a minute, then she's in front and everyone's cool with it because we're all going to continue to buy tickets. Nothing has really happened. I'm still going to be waiting in line, like you're saying in the traffic example. So I love that example.
Yep.
And you're thinking about the bots. Anthony Pompliano tweeted, there's so many bots on Twitter that we'll all have to hire a personal spam fighter before the end of the year. And I responded, ironically, we'll hire bots to fight the other bots because it's just kind of like, we're going to just lean on the algorithms and AI here or whatever, whatever powers the latest bot, which God, sometimes they shock me in what they can do. But getting away from bots, back to Haste Arcade, we're in a bear market. We're in a crypto winter. I know you're in LA or you're on the West Coast, but it's chilly. Prices are down. What are you guys doing now that you weren't doing maybe, or that you wouldn't do in a bull market?
It's interesting. Being a Bitcoin SV person, I've never really experienced a bull market, so it hasn't been that much of a factor for us. And that's just something, within this Bitcoin SV community in general, like that was one of the things that made me pretty firm on like I actually believe in what this blockchain is doing. You will rarely hear people talking about the price of this coin and we need the price to go up. You'll hear way more discussions about here's a new company that's using BSV to do this in micropayments or this in tokens. And that to me is that's where I want to be. I want to be building with people who are focused on building and not necessarily like speculating just on price and hoping that, someone else will come and buy this Bored Ape yacht because, they think it has perceived value. So, what have we done? We've definitely, man, I don't know. We haven't really changed much. We raised some money towards the end of last year and our runway has stayed the same. We've had a pretty straightforward roadmap in terms of what we wanted to do, releasing new games, building our SDK, and then doing some actual mainstream marketing. And when you think about it, it's like how many companies? This is a question for you. How many companies have you actually been scrolling through Instagram and seen that are crypto/blockchain companies running a real paid social media ad? And I'm not talking about like an exchange, so not Coinbase or Binance, like an actual company that's using the blockchain to build something.
Yeah, I mean, maybe I shouldn't say anything for about 10 seconds and it will really emphasize the crickets, right? Because no one really is doing that. I'm just thinking about Instagram as far as like the scroll
Yep.
or, it's really not pushed. The only things that's actually a really good question. Like, how do people get into Web3 or crypto
Yep.
projects? And I think a lot of it is probably top down. There's a certain amount of people that kind of move the space. And, if you'll see somebody on Twitter do something, they're like, oh, okay, let me check into it. But, you talked about the ICO craze of 2017, which is absolutely out of control. Like that was the wild, wild west. Like, there should be a movie that comes out. I'm sure Nicolas Cage will be in it and he'll be sweating and running around, but, freaking out, trying to find the gold.
Finding
But
NFTs. Yeah.
yeah, exactly. No, but that's a really good question. And I think that there are very few. So if you guys are doing targeted ads,
Yep.
that's awesome. And how has that gone? Because I do think, the friction of getting someone to sign up, or for me, when hey, you want to listen to my podcast? Man, there's so many podcasts out there. So
Yep.
trying to find that uniqueness and that thing that's going to push people through to click. How has that been for you guys with the marketing?
I think we've had some really good results so far. And basically that was one of the things that we said all along was like, look, we've never seen an actual blockchain company like advertising to the mainstream. It seems like it's mostly just exchanges, doing major corporate deals with sports franchises, or it's these NFT projects that celebrities are hyping and then, that's it. Like what about the actual just startups that are actually using the blockchain? And I think a lot of people are talking about building things and saying this is coming soon, but like we've actually built working stuff in the market. So in terms of what we've done from the marketing perspective is we've teamed up with an esports company. So there's a group called Built by Gamers. They've got like Call of Duty teams, Valorant, Fortnite, that type of stuff. And so their streamers will go on, they'll be on Twitch, and before their match starts, they'll be like, "Hey guys, like after this, come meet me in the Haste Arcade. We're gonna play a jump tournament, and the winner's gonna get $100 or whatever. I'll shout you out next stream," stuff like that. So they're reaching, they get 10 million plus views a month. They got a pretty good following from their gamers. So we did that, and then it's just been, the paid social media ads and the paid Google ads. And the stats I can give you on that would be like, through our research, a hyper casual game, if a game developer is actually going to go and spend money to market it, they're paying about 25 cents to 30 cents per click. And that's just, you can't earn anything from those games. So it's just like maybe the person thinks the game is fun, maybe they don't. Well, the ads that we're running are obviously promoting, hyper casual games that you can play and earn from. And we're averaging 3 cents a click. So, significantly lower. And what we've seen is that, the click doesn't mean they convert, but actually getting a customer is costing us about $1 right now. And those customers go on to spend about $3 over the course of the next 2.5 months. So it's like, okay, if we're putting in $1 and getting $3 of revenue out, within 3 months, we think that's a pretty decent like return rate. And that's something that you can scale. So, yeah, we've only spent 5 to 7 thousand bucks so far, but it's generated 5 to 7 thousand users that end up paying more than it typically costs to acquire them. So we think those metrics look pretty good. And that's something that I think we've talked to some VCs and they say this is cool to start, get to about the 50,000, 100,000 user range, and then we'll see if this is actually a trend that's going to continue, or if maybe Google is just finding literally the best people who are the most likely to try the arcade, which could be the case too, right? So we got to keep running these things probably through the end of the year, see where we're at. But I think the early signs are that the mainstream audience, the mainstream gamer is at least willing to give us a look and try for a pretty reasonable price.
That is so cool that you can put $1 into a machine and you get $3.50 out to, a little bit of time later. That's phenomenal marketing. 3 cents cost per click is exceedingly low on most things. So congrats on that. It means that there is something about the brand and what you're doing that people are like interested enough to click, start the process of starting to engage. My last question I have for you is, are there physical Haste Arcade machines in dive bars in America where some drunk fool can go play?
Yes and no. The yes would be, like I had mentioned, that Bitcoin Association. They have set up a handful of these Bitcade events where they'll come in, they'll put TVs up like on the walls. They have joysticks. They'll connect to them. They'll pull our games up, and some of them they even like built like actual wood like structures and stuff to have this stuff. And they'll have cocktails. They'll make it a fun event. The last one we did, or one of the last ones, was in Miami. I was at this place like super trendy bar called the Broken Shaker. It was really cool, and they had like this outdoor bar. They had the games over here. They had like the cocktails over here and all that stuff, and that was really sick. There were probably like 300 people that came through that night. There's a venue through BarPay that is I don't want to jinx it, but starting in September, they will be using BarPay, and then they are also going to look into possibly doing like a weekly game night with Haste because they want people spending, a stable coin or BSV to eliminate the credit card processing fees. So they're like, well, if we can have like this Haste Arcade thing go once a week and we start getting people to actually turning their money into crypto, and then we can offer drink specials for the people that want to pay with crypto, eventually, like everyone will just be paying with crypto and we won't have to worry about these credit card fees. So that's their approach. So when I said like yes and no, like yes, there have been some. No, there is not a current one that's like permanent right now, but I think that's coming soon. Trademark, just like everything in crypto.
Right. It's always right around the corner. If you could, do you want to take a super brief second and call out where people can find you if they have questions? I know I found you on Twitter. You have a couple websites. If you're on LinkedIn, where are the places if someone wants to reach out to learn more?
Yeah, I'm on LinkedIn, Joe DePinto. My last name's DePinto. I don't have a personal Twitter. I just like Haste Arcade. At Haste Arcade is where you can go to find me on Twitter. Dan's usually manning the Twitter account. He's pretty good at DMs and all that. Haste Arcade is the Instagram handle. I'm on Instagram, Joe _DePinto. And then I think the best thing to do though would just be go through the website, hastearcade.com. We've got, contacts. We've got a Discord channel that's really active. Plenty of different ways to get in touch.
Perfect. Well, thanks so much. And I will drop all the links you just mentioned in the show notes.
Sweet. This was awesome. Really appreciate it, Jarrett.
Thanks for listening to this episode, and be sure to follow Joe and Haste Arcade on Twitter and LinkedIn. And you can also check out their website at hastearcade.com. And don't worry, I've already gone ahead and left all of these links in the episode's show notes. As always, please follow us on social media at More Than Blockchain, and check out our website at morethanblockchain.xyz to learn more about the pod. No matter where you're listening, please subscribe to the podcast and share this episode's link with a friend, family member, or colleague who you think would find value in learning about BarPay and Haste Arcade. Thanks again for checking out More Than Blockchain, and I'll see you next time.